Welcome to the Achieve It podcast, hosted by marketing coach, journalist, technologist, and Speaker Hall of Fame member Terry Brock. Get ready to discover new and interesting ways to reach and connect with customers as Terry and his guests dive into the world of technology, marketing, relationship building, productivity, and other ideas that will help you achieve your entrepreneurial dreams. And now, here's your host, a fun and smart guy with a really good haircut, Terry Brock.
We've been talking about the concept that I like to call eye trouble. Now, we don't mean EYE, the I. What we're talking about is the I, the capital I, with people who have, as I like to call it, eye trouble. They're always talking about themselves. You might be familiar with these kind of people. You've seen them. They go, oh, I did this, I did that. And it's all about, when they also use me, so me, myself, and always about them and not focusing on others. What to do about that and how to manage that kind of situation is what we're going to address in this particular video, because I am joined by my good friend and that wonderful guy who knows about communication, Dr. Bill Lampton. Dr. Lampton, Bill, good to have you here today.
Always terrific to collaborate with Terry Brock.
Now, I know your doctorate is in communication, and you teach, you've taught at the college level, you have taught many executives, you're in high demand on help on these kind of things. For those that weren't able to join us on our first episode of this, tell us a little bit about the issue that I'm calling eye trouble, what it is in a nutshell, and what we see happening in communication with that.
Well, as you stated very well in our previous conversation, Terry, eye trouble, and I love the way you had that play on words or the letter there. Eye trouble is when somebody decides never to let go of a conversation once they start it. They've got control. They don't even know how maybe to relinquish control. And the entire conversation is focused on them.
Yeah, exactly. And so we see that happening, and we've tried to get around it. There's times we just sit there and endure. Sometimes I think, okay, I'll just see what they're like. I find it's really kind of strange. They're oblivious to the fact that they are doing all the talking. And so I've been really frustrated to figure out what to do. You just say you're in a situation and you want to get away from that, and I don't know what to do. So Bill will be all right. Let me create a hypothetical situation, but it's not quite so hypothetical. I've dealt with it before. You're at a meal. You've now ordered your meal. You placed the order for the server. Server has gone back to the kitchen to get it ready, and they'll bring it back in a little while. And this person that has eye trouble that you are having dinner with, you might not know them real well, or maybe you do. Probably you wouldn't know them that well. They start going on and on and on about themselves. The food comes and they're still going on, and they're just droning on about themselves. What are some options on how to deal with that, Bill, from a person's point of view who's sitting there being abused by that person who has eye trouble?
There's several tactics that can be used, Terry. One is to do like maybe a policeman would do. Hey, I need to get on this. Wait just a minute. Verbally interrupt and visually interrupt.
I say, yeah, you're raising your hands. It's like that international sign of, hold it, stop here.
That's right, stop. Or if you wanted to be like a kid in school, raise your hand for permission. These are good ways to say, hey, I want to get in here too. That's a nonverbal way of doing it. Verbally, you can truly interrupt. And many people would say, well, gosh, isn't it rude to interrupt? But Deborah Tannen, you're familiar with her works. And
yes, good, really marvelous work.
Yes, she said, when you're dealing with somebody who is not going to give you an opportunity to speak, they are being rude. And if you were talking, they would interrupt you. So why don't you just go ahead and interrupt? For example, Terry, you're talking along about a vacation trip you've had, and I say, Terry, I need to talk to you. I think you'd be interested in what I did on my vacation. Let me have a few minutes to talk about that. So you can interrupt there. Another way, if you're at a meal, get somebody else on the conversation. A server is going to come to the table several times. Say to them, how long have you been working here? What is the best dish here for dessert? I'm thinking, in other words, sidetrack the conversation, get somebody else in on it.
Yeah, I think that could be a good idea that you bring in someone else like, well, that's real interesting, John, but I'm kind of interested in what Mary has to say over here, and divert the conversation from John, who has eye trouble, over to Mary, start asking her questions.
And that's what managers have to do so often in meetings. You and I know that the corporate world is filled with people who want to dominate meetings. And so somebody else is going to have to get other people in on it. I like what you just said. John, we appreciate your contribution. It's very valuable. We're going to get back to that, but let's hear what Mary has to say.
Yeah, I think that's the idea, and even mentioning something of, because we do want to get inclusion from everyone here at the table, or everyone involved in this decision that we've got to make, rather than having one person dominating it all the time. I think another thing might work, I'd be interested in your feedback on this, is you're at that hypothetical, and go back to my hypothetical there at the meal, where you could take a topic that they just spoke about and spin it into something else, where if they might be talking about their trip to Arkansas, and they're just going on and on and on about their trip to Arkansas, you say, well, that's interesting, but by the way, Arkansas is right over there by Oklahoma. Have you ever been to Oklahoma? Have you been, you know that? What's your favorite city in Oklahoma? Or something that you're careening the conversation off into another direction, where it becomes more of the game back and forth rather than one person dumping on the other person. What are your thoughts on that, Bill?
Well, I think on that, the person might monologue about Oklahoma. What you might could do would be to say, Oklahoma, gosh, is right next to that. Let me tell you about a week I had in Oklahoma. So you can that way get the conversation back to you. If you just give them another cue about another state, they probably got 50 ways they could talk to you.
Yeah, 50, yes, I think they would, or at least 49 if they're already on one. They could do that. And I think also a pivoting might work. So then you say, well, that reminds me of Arkansas. I met a guy named Robert, and Robert was in oil and gas. In the oil and gas industry, have you seen what they're doing these days? They're doing, and I'm just kind of pivoting and going over from Arkansas over to oil and gas industry or something like that.
One of the things that I've often suggested to people, getting away for a minute from the meal setting, is when you, for example, in the workplace, have somebody who drops by your office and you know that they're going to be very long-winded, what you need to do is tell them, well, gosh, I can't be with you now, but I can be with you in 5 minutes in your office. And what does that do? That gives you control of when the conversation ends, because when you go to their office, then you can leave, so you have something else to get to. And another factor related to this, getting back now to the meal situation, we can always put a time limit on a conversation. You're talking with me, Terry, at a meal. You wouldn't do this, but if you were, and you were talking incessantly, I could look at my watch and so Terry, I've only got about 10 more minutes. I've got another appointment. How can we wind this up?
Ah, I like that. That's official, and it works and does well. Now, some people would say they could also, like, for instance, use some sleight of hand, which is not so sleight of hand, but setting an alarm on their phone. So, the alarm list went off. I've got to go take care of this, and excuse themselves and get away on something like that. To me, it seems like I don't want to do something that's where I'm lying. I don't want to do something where I'm being rude or obnoxious to the person. And so I'm hesitant to do that. And often I end up just sitting there listening and not doing anything. What are your thoughts on other ways that we can maneuver and get around the situation?
Well, sometimes let's switch once more to the business office setting. If you've got an assistant, tell the assistant quietly and confidentially, of course, this person who has an appointment with me has a tendency to ramble on and on. In 15 minutes, I want you to walk into my office and tell me that I've got another appointment that I need to get to.
I guess that would be a way to do it as well. So there's lots of ways to handle that. And I think that the most important thing is that we realize, okay, I want to make sure that I don't become the person who has eye trouble, and that I'm staying alert, and I'm asking the other person more probing questions, asking them questions about why they want to do this. I found it very interesting. Years ago, I heard a gentleman say, it's always interesting in a conversation that after it's over, say 30 minutes, an hour later, to step back and think, okay, how much do I know about that other person, and how much do they know about me? Has it all been one-sided, or has it been back and forth, like you say in the tennis match? And it seems like that's a good rule of thumb to say, okay, I want to find out from them and ask more probing questions, not just short answer yes or no questions. And that way we tend to get a little bit more cooperation. What are your thoughts on that?
You and I have talked before, Terry, about the power of questions, because questions illustrate, when I ask you a question, that illustrates that I'm handing the opportunity to talk to you. It also illustrates that I'm interested in you and not just myself. So, one of the ways we can almost scorekeep at the end of a conversation, which you talked about a second ago, one of the ways we can scorekeep is at the end of it, ask yourself silently, how many questions did I ask?
Ooh.
And how many questions did the other person ask? You always want to be on the plus side, the one who has asked the most sincere, probing questions, not just yes or no, but what's your opinion on this, or what's your experience with this, where you give them the opportunity to elaborate their thoughts.
Words of wisdom, Dr. Lampton. We really appreciate that. And I think this and other areas of communication that you deal with your clients, I know is really helpful. And if someone is watching this and thinks, hey, I need some help in speech that I've got coming up, or they want to talk with you about this, I know you go into a lot of companies and work with them on that. And like we were saying, you've taught at the university level. How can someone get in touch with you?
Thank you, Terry. I believe the best way to find out what I do, how I can serve you as a corporation or a leader, is to go to my website, Biz Communication Guy. So my website, B-I-Z, bizcommunicationguy.com.
Sounds good. Well, Dr. Bill Lampton, thank you so much for joining us today. Appreciate you being here.
Thank you, Terry. And you and I will keep asking those questions. We will keep listening, and we will avoid eye trouble.